Welcome to Makers International, a podcast of makers, connecting with makers from all around the world. Here's your hosts, Jamie Page, Chris Cute, and now, Richard Morley.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and good times, whatever time it is, wherever you are listening. Joined with me, as always, Mr. Chris Cute.
Hello.
Mr. Jamie Page.
Hello.
And joining us all the way from where he is, it's Dale from Maple Tree Studios. Hi, Dale.
Hello.
I completely forgot that you were going to be with us tonight, I have to confess. I've slept since whenever it was, whoever it was mentioned that you were going to be here. But you are here, and that's all that matters, because I think you might have a lot to say about, well, hopefully you've got a lot to say, otherwise there's kind of no point being here. The topic this evening... a very quick welcome, obviously, to our live listeners. We've got quite a bit of chat, a chatter, should I say, in the live chat this evening. So they are, and I'm just going to whiz through them as always. If I miss you, talk more. Here we've got Andy Pugh, Anna B from Anna's Workshop, Wayne the Woodturner. Hi, Wayne. We've got SK Crafts. Hi, Steve, Peter Miller, and there's other people in there as well. So if I missed you off the list, I do apologise, but big welcome to you live this evening. As always, tonight's show is brought to you in part by Yorkshire Grit, Woodturners Abrasive Paste, our good friend Chad at Mancrafting, Pam from Highland Boxes, and our good friend who does all the internet stuff. Sorry, Jamie. In the background, the kind of silent partner, it's Steve Harneal at Harneal Media. If you want to know more about these wonderful people, I think we're probably doing a giveaway at some point in the near future, aren't we, Jamie?
Yeah, we do too, yeah.
Sorry, I apologise. Aren't we, Steve? If you're new to the show, every so often when we remember our awesome sponsors kind of donate some of their wares, and we give them away to our listeners, generally live. Every time we do it live, we ask a question, and it takes usually about 6.5 nanoseconds before somebody comes up with the right answer. So they're particularly taxing quizzes, obviously. Head on over to the website, makersinternationalpodcast.com/sponsors, and everything's there. Chris, do you want to kind of kick off the topic? Because I've slept since we talked about it, as I've already said, because it was kind of your initial seedling of an idea, and then it's grown into...
Yeah, it's evolved into something more than I originally came up with, because let's be honest, I'm a simpleton, and you guys complicated it. So
I'd like to think of you more of an acorn, which has obviously, after these
and
years...
You've helped it grow into an oak tree. Thank you.
You did all that. You were a fairly mature oak when we first met, Chris. Actually,
yeah. Yeah, I'm the nut that the blind squirrel found. Thank you.
I'm going to make a note of that.
Actually. Okay. Well, this started out just talking about shops, and my initial thinking was talking about, effective use and layout and planning of a shop, but then it got moved on much more into more of what we titled it, smart space, and space it doesn't necessarily mean your workshop. I mean, everybody that's involved in the making community has a workshop of some type. I mean, some people have a workshop in an upstairs bedroom, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, other people have a workshop with power tools in their basement or garage, so it can apply to any space. So we just started thinking about what we could talk about as far as smart space. And I want to preface this by saying one thing, that smart space is entirely up to what you think it is. Okay, we're not going to sit here today and try to tell you that if you don't have this, then you have a stupid space. I mean, that's not what we're doing. We're just saying we're discussing our thoughts, perhaps, on what we think is a smart space for us, but it's totally up to you to determine what that smart space is for you. So if that's enough groundwork, Richard, there you go.
Yeah,
but if you don't have a scroll saw,
then you have a very smart space.
The highest level of, yeah.
You have a master's degree in smart space.
Weren't you kind of jiggling around in your workshop recently? Isn't that how this kind of started out?
Well, yeah, it's sort of. That's what kind of initiated the thought because, oh my word! I mean, even though I cleaned my shop once, it's gotten to the point where it needs it again. It's going to take me a week to clean that shop up. But as I was walking around there looking at things and how mine are currently laid out, I was questioning myself whether this was the most effective way to use the space I have or not, and that's what made me think of the topic. And then, obviously, like I said, being the blind squirrel nut, you guys made it grow into an oak tree, and here we sit today. So I have a lot of questions pertaining to this from our good friend Andy Pugh. If you want to start with those, or if you have some initial thoughts you'd rather start with, it's up to you.
I mean, I'm kind of, do whatever. I mean, I'm genuinely interested because I've been doing a bit of sort of workshop-y related tomfoolery the last few weeks and months. I'm sure a lot of people have, because I think there's a good percentage of people who have had the opportunity above what they normally would day to day to do this. And I mean, Dale's, although he looks very stern with his arms crossed, he does look like he's agreeing with me with his head nodding backwards and forwards, like excited.
This is entirely to cover up the belly kind of thing. I mean, that's what these arms are crossed for. Let's be honest here.
Fair play. I mean, have you had a bit of extra time on your hands for workshop related?
No, I'm critical worker. I've been working all the way through, apart from when I was ill. So every hour I get, in the workshop is worth its weight in gold. So having a smart space is really, really important, because you just can't invent it as you go along. You've only got a couple of hours at night, a couple of hours at the weekend, and a couple of hours. You want to maximize what you can do with it.
I mean, because you're quite IT proficient in terms of.
Oh, it's a lie.
Okay, so you portray this IT proficient kind of facade to us, which we all take at face value. And like most IT professionals, as I understand, I'm kidding, obviously. But you are. I mean, I certainly do, and I know Jamie does. Talk to you about kind of tech stuff, webcams, and all that sort of stuff. And if anyone's watched your live streams, they're fairly tech intensive from the, just the way that you produce them. You seem to have things set up, and that doesn't happen by chance. I mean, has that evolved, or did you kind of go, I want to do this, I want to do that, I need, did you put loads of thought into it, or did it just kind of happen?
So I mean, I subscribe to the view that it's okay to iterate. But each iteration kind of has to have a little bit of thinking about, okay, I've learned all this, I need to make this right next time. So you're never done, but that's okay. So the workshop and the camera system, particularly the workshop, it's currently out as kind of iteration 3, if that makes sense. But the first time you lay out, you think, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and this will all make sense. And then you realize, well, that doesn't work, that gets in the way, and this is a pain, and that's kind of a thing. So you bit of adapt. So yeah, so everything you see, kind of thing, when I'm doing that, is learnings from the last time. But this iteration 3, so to speak, the third kind of re-layout has kind of been the longest. This is about a year. It's kind of been this shape. The cameras have all been here in one shape or form. And so it was planned, but it was planned based on the last one.
It's kind of what I don't know anybody, Dale. I don't, honestly, and if there's somebody out there who says, "Oh, I have done this," then please raise your hand, and we will all worship you. But I don't know anybody who has set out with their initial plan and kept it. It's always, it seems to be some sort of an evolution. You start out with a good idea, and then you go, "Okay, that's working. This isn't. Okay, we need to fix that," and then it evolves into what works for you best. It's not like you have an initial plan and start out with it and stick with it. It's like, no, that I don't. And like I said, I'm just the only person who's just dumb. If somebody else is set out and laid out their shop,
I think also you have to evolve with the tools that you buy as well. Like for example, my lathe, I started off on a side bench, and I had to evolve because I bought a bigger lathe. And so there's no reason, there's no way I could put my lathe on the bench that I got, because otherwise I'd be standing on stilts whilst turning.
Okay.
But the next time you lay out your workshop, you'll make sure you leave space for a bigger lathe.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But,
Thing.
I
Again,
mean,
that's
that's all well and good, but I think a lot of us, the space is defined. I mean, like Jamie, your workshop, there's no extension on the cards for that space. You know, you have got whatever the square footage is of that space. You know, the windows, the doors, they're fixed, and they're complete non-variables. That they're set. There's nothing you can do about that. I'm the same. I think you only get that. We plan to have a bigger, plan to put that space aside for a bigger machine when you move kind of, I get premises, or space, or if you're in the fortunate position where, and a lot of people are, let's not just, just kind of play the pity card here. Chris, we always kind of pull your leg at our own your expense. The size of your shop.
What else is new?
And we always will. Let's be honest.
Fine.
But, you've got quite a reasonable plot for your house. Yeah, I'm going to guess and maybe make a weird assumption here that you could potentially extend your workshop a direction by X number of feet. And by that I mean you've got the space on your property to do that. Yeah?
Yes, I do.
So if everything else was,
it would be very expensive, but yes, I could do that.
Sure.
If I decided to spend that kind of money, but I'm cheap, so
I mean,
that'll never happen.
I guess one of the interesting things that's worth throwing into the mix is that what you decide to what I guess it was true in my case. I don't know if it's true in everybody's, but in my case, right, this workshop has to do this, and I need this, and I need this. And by the time you get to iteration 2, you realize that I'm not using those tools quite as much. I'm not using this quite as much. I'm not using that quite as much. That idea of having all of this on display was clearly stupid. I need to put them in a drawer. These sort of things.
I'm now bored of wiping down sawdust and just general dust.
That's it, kind of thing. Yeah. So there's a little bit of that as the paradigm or the use of the space changes. And I guess that comes to the title of the show, really. The flexibility that the space needs to have rises considerably.
Well, I want to get to these questions real quick, just because they take a different direction than I think we've been talking. But I wanted to answer a question out in the chat from Ian. Chris, how big is your shop? Ian, my shop is a 2-car garage. Okay, so if you can put 2 cars, under a roof, that's the size of my shop.
So 60, 70,000 square feet.
Yeah, well, because of course, we each drive 30,000 square foot vehicles in the U.S. Jesus. All right. This is from Andy. These are from Andy Pugh, and Andy takes an approach to these questions and this topic that I would not have, and maybe a lot of other people would, but but you know what? But hey, like I said, at the beginning, a smart space means whatever it means to you. I mean, to hell with our opinion.
He lives near France as well.
Well, that's true. All right, his question, his first one: Has anyone got an internet? I'm sorry. Has anyone got an internet-enabled workshop, as in Alexa, Google, turn on the extraction? Is that a useful thing, or is it just a gimmick? Okay, Dale?
Genius. Absolute genius. I can turn the workshop on and off from the house. I can remember to turn the lights on to get into the house so I don't trip over and break my neck. It's very handy. When you're working in it, pointless other than the remote control, unless you turn the extraction on or turn the compressor on, wherever you are, kind of thing. As long as you remember where it is.
I have
And the remote.
It doesn't come in very handy when you got a Scottish accent, though.
Nah, I've got to pretend to be French.
I have internet in my workshop, but that's about as far as I go. Anyway,
Do you have a telly or anything like that in your shop, Chris?
no.
No, because I know that's quite a.
I could have, Richard, but I don't want it. It's a distraction.
It's too much of a distraction. Yeah, you can end up getting hurt with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think. I mean, I don't. I take the laptop in there if I'm streaming, but that's that's it. I have a little Bluetooth speaker, and that's about as technology as it gets. Because although I've got the woman on my phone, and I won't say the name because she'll start gobbing off at me, no doubt, as she generally has in the past. But if you've got a machine running, it can't hear you, and if you've got the radio on, it still can't hear you, or you can't hear it. So I've found that to be, like Dale said, completely useless. But I've also got a it's not an extractor. I know a lot of people have got like the remote control plugs for the extractor. So a bit like with the vac, if you turn the tool on and it's all connected, the vac comes on. But it's one for one of those ceiling air cleaner things.
Exactly the same reason as I did it. Yep.
But it's completely, for me, the only reason I use it's kind of annoying because like I don't need a remote. The shop is not. I can literally stand anywhere in my workshop and it's in arm's reach because it's up in the ceiling.
With all due respect,
but I still.
You're huge. I'm a short ass. I can't reach the thing.
Yeah, I mean, so it's. I mean, if I jumped, I could bang my head on it. So it's not like it's high, but the actual, the square, because I'm less than 100 square feet, and Jamie, you've been there. You can reach it, but it's really irritating because I normally you'd think, well, you just put the remote in the drawer and then lose it and it's fine, or you Velcro it to the box. No, can't do that because you can turn it on, you can turn it off, and you can tell it how much how sucky it is. Yeah. But you can't tell it to stay on for an hour or 2 hours with buttons on the machine. It only has the buttons for the time on the remote.
That's the technical term for it, by the way.
I can think of that.
This machine is this sucky. This machine is. Anyway.
So in order to be like really sucky for an hour, you've got to use the remote. So I'm literally standing there like this. Like you used to with the telly when you first got a telly remote. You'd sit in front of it like that.
Yeah.
Go.
Because I've had some tools that could be sucky for hours upon hours. I mean, I just want to let you know.
I mean, that's probably a different podcast, actually.
Have any of you ever had a remote and you've actually gone right up to a thing and it's not responding with the remote or something like that, and you're still bashing at the remote, or you're shouting into your Alexa or something like that, and it's not responding to it, and you could just quite easily put your hand a little bit further forward and turn it off. But
I've literally turned it off using the remote to push the button like that.
Remember the magic. It's like Aladdin's lamp. You take the back off and you roll the batteries.
Remember that? The old rabbit, rub them together. Get 3 weeks out of them, rub them together.
Magically, you get a couple more clicks at it.
How many hours have you wasted looking for the batteries and the little plastic cover because you've dropped it and that little plastic remote's gone on the floor?
I dread to think.
No, I mean I'm worse than Andy Pugh here. Everything's labelled and boxed and easy to find.
All right, well, going on from that with another of Randy's questions. If your workshop doesn't have some form of automation yet, and Andy, I don't know how to tell you how that makes me feel. But what would you start with? And you know what? We can each have our own. But Dale, let me ask you, because you have that kind of automation in your shop. What would you start with, or what would you recommend people start with, or is there a recommendation, or is it more? What are you going to be doing first, dude? Then I'll know.
Get some of the plugs, just like Richard was talking about. Get the plugs with the little remote kind of things. That way you can turn them off. Particularly for those tools, they're a pain in the ass. So for me, it was the CamVac. Now the CamVac's in a sound enclosure, So to turn the cam vac on and off, I've kind of got to open the door, go in, turn the thing on and off. So that's how this began. Is a good idea. So if I put one of those plugs in there, I can turn the thing on and off. Then the high thing. So I guess for me it would be just use the remote controls and the plugs. Those would be the first things I would recommend to anyone because they're just useful. You know?
Well, Jamie, what about you? If you were going to start out automating your shop, what would you start out with?
I'll be totally honest. My workshop's so small. I don't think I really need anything like that at the moment. But with regards to having things like internet or anything like that out there, then I'd probably just run an Ethernet cable out there. That's probably the start of what I'm going to be putting out there.
I think I'd be inclined to agree with that as well. Yeah.
I mean, I can literally put my arms like that and touch both walls.
Well, I mean, I was going to say lighting, but as I walk into my shop, I mean, the switch is like right there. So I don't need automated lighting. But in the winter, what I would like to do is have an automated heating possibility so that when I know I want to go out in my shop, I can turn the heat on about a half an hour before I go out there. So that when I walk out there, I'm not freezing. You get the idea. All right, next question. Is a CNC or laser the first step down a smart workshop? Or do we just mean like a really tidy, smart suit approach to workshops? I mean, and Andy, I think we mean whatever it means to you. I mean, I'll reiterate that again. So I don't think we mean to say one or the other. I think it depends, but because see, I would never even think about a CNC or a laser as part of a smart workshop, just because that's not what I do, but other people might.
I'll give Richard my laser.
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree with you on that one, Chris. I would see those, the CNC or the laser or the 3D printer or the whatever it is, as a stationary tool or a machine in a workshop environment, in the same way that an arbor press might be for a leather worker.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they're not smart to have. I just within the topic we're talking about today, I don't know that would be the first thing I think about.
I think the very simplest form of smart, as in clever, innovative, are the way that you find to get more space, to hide more things, to cram every little bit. I think that's, for me, the first sort of level. And do you guys subscribe to the principle of workflow?
I do
in your shops.
I do
really
I do very much, but I want to say something just as an American looking at a lot of what the UK workers are doing, because I want to say this correctly. I really admire those of you out that have a shed like the size of a Joe Whitaker shed or of an Andy Pugh shed, because smart space is almost critical in order to making that space work. And a lot of you do a fantastic job. If I ever applied that kind of ingenuity to my own shop, then I would have a heck of a lot more space than I do now, but I don't. I just want to say I really admire the people who actually have small shops and make them efficient, because that is smart, in my opinion, because you have to be smart at that point.
It's like...
Can I just quickly say, does anyone remember, I don't know if he's still making videos, Stephen's 8x6 workshop?
Yes, I do.
Great.
The stuff that guy packed into that very small workshop, and the stuff that guy was producing was just incredible. It's sort of like everything was, it was like a puzzle, and it just all of a sudden pulled out of everywhere. It was just unbelievable.
And
what's
that's
interesting is that. Sorry, go on.
But no, I was just literally going to say that's the kind of thing that Chris was talking about, but that's an evolutionary thing. So that kind of goes back to what you were saying, Dale, about the iteration number one. And if I think of any of the spaces I've ever worked in, you just kind of fill it, and then you get something else, and you're like, oh, right, okay.
Time to readjust.
Got to fit this in now, and that's a day by day thing. For me,
it's interesting you talked about workflow and we're talking about spaces, because it's kind of the 5S principle is the smartest space you've got.
Yes.
Everything has a place, and there's a place for everything. So, so the first thing I would say, it's important for a smart space. It's not really a smart space. It's keep it tidy. If it's tight and it's small, keep it tidy. Use it, put it away, take it out, use it, put it away, and get into that regime. But thinking about the storage, thinking about where is this going to live, and not just be that junk pile we all used to, I certainly know I used to have a junk pile that kind of moved around the workshop. Can I put this away? First task, can I put it away?
Yeah. And everything I have, well, I say everything I have, not everything I have, but 90% or 95% of what I have has a home. And if I get anything new, it has to have a home within the first week or two, because otherwise it gets put to the side, and then something else gets put on top of it, and then you can't operate. I mean, I'd ask the question because I completely do not subscribe to that whole workflow thing, and I get people, and I pick on you, Chris,
that's fine.
With the size of your workshop, I can see how that is relevant.
It is relevant for me. The problem with my workshop,
you do this, you do that, you do that.
The problem with my workshop is the way it's laid out. I have a support beam or pole, I should say, right dead in the middle of my workshop, which is holding up the floor of my house, which is in turn holding up the roof of my house. And so having that pole right in the dead center of my workshop really interrupts that flow. Because if I didn't have that, I would have made my shop very different than what it is today. Because ideally, and this is just for me, I'm a woodworker, so this is how I would do it myself. I would have my table saw right at the door of my my garage door. So when I open my garage door, my table saw would be right there. The reason for that is if I go to the store and buy like sheets of plywood, rather than trying to store 4x8 sheets of plywood or 8x4s, I forget how you British call it. But I would automatically cut them down to the sizes I needed for the product I was working on, and then move those off to the side. It just makes more sense to do it that way, because then I don't have to worry about going back to the table saw again to cut these things down. And then you start talking about laying out your workshop, what goes next to each other. You put your planer next to your jointer, because both of those tools do the same type of job, and so it makes no sense to have your jointer on one side of the room and your planer on the other. So you start adjoining tools and their uses together until you start with the beginning. You go to first steps, second steps, third steps, fourth steps, fifth step, finishing. That is the proper workflow for a workshop. Do I currently have that? Hell no. I don't have that. But you know what? I don't. But I'm not that uptight about it.
I was just going to say, does that?
I'm not that uptight about it. It works for me, and that's all that really matters.
And it doesn't really stop what you do.
One of the things that someone just reminded me in the chat, and I think the first time I saw it was Eloy quite a few years ago. For tools that normally have a permanent place in your workshop, that Richard the Beard has just installed in his workshop is a flip table in the workshop.
That's efficient.
A flip module. So that's also another good idea to have in your workshop as well.
See, I don't disagree with those per se, but I've always been very cautious of those. Not from a safety point of view or anything like that. I mean, if you've seen me work, safety doesn't really come into it. But I don't think they're the best use of the cubic, the volume, because you need that kind of extra. If you take those two tools and put them in a cupboard, I think you could get both of those tools in a smaller cupboard than on a table that flips.
So it's interesting. So myself and Richard talked about this because I kind of implemented a kind of iteration 1 of this. The idea is that the modules themselves only have something on one side, not on both. So what you get is a bench. So when you flip down, you push the modules together, you have a bench in the middle of your room, where you can push them to the sides and the benches. And when you need the tool, you flip the tool up. But you're right in terms of there's a dead space for the turn. But the idea is it's not two tools, it's kind of one tool and a bench on the top. So the amount of turn space is less. So it's quite it's a way to squeeze that little bit extra bench space out
And if you,
without having to do the lift and shift
and
all
let's
that
and let's
stuff that we have to do
and
otherwise.
let's be honest, if you're working in a tight space to begin with, that dead space you were talking about is never going to exist. You're going to find a way to use that dead space for some sort of storage. You know, that's, I mean, it's not going.
I mean, for me personally, I 100% genuinely see the attraction of the speed at which you can basically get that particular tool out. You know, if you've got a scroll saw attached to the bottom of your bench, I want a scroll saw, and there it is.
And I'm going to take that clip and put it on my phone. Have you saying I want a scroll saw?
Yeah, absolutely, Jamie. If you want to just like copy and paste that, re-edited it, completely waste take it out of context, and put it in for your own agenda, absolutely fine. For me personally, that speed at which you can swap from one thing to the other is less precious than that bit of dead space, and just cram it all in, because when you like Chris was saying, when you've got such a small space, that space is the important bit, not the speed. That's probably why I just pay no attention to workflow at all. Just get it done.
It's much more. I think the takeaway from this is, if that was a fixed spot in the middle of the room and it was just a turny on the top of it, I'd be 100% with you. But the idea of making a module on wheels means that it's already a movable. It's essentially a big bench or a small bench or a side benches when you need them, and in a small space. The thing that always makes me jealous of, one of the things that I really notice the difference between the US and the UK is, the UK, we put everything against the walls. In America, everything goes in the big bench in the middle of the room. By comparison, it's quite a fundamental difference.
Except for a guy that I know. Anyway, but yeah, you're right.
Oh, okay.
No, I do not have a bench in the middle of my room. My bench is up against a wall.
But it's really popular, and so you can totally see the value of it, but it takes up so much space.
It does, but I mean, but the value of having a bench in the middle of your room is that you have 360-degree angle around it, and so it allows you to do things like clamping and things of that nature. When you put a bench up against a wall, it's very hard to devise. I mean, and I've even shown it on my videos many times how to go about doing clamping on a bench that's against a wall, but it's just much easier. But you're right. I guess what you're basically saying is, because that apparently the majority of people in the States have more room in their workshops, they can do that. They can get away with it. Whereas there was no way you could do it. It just wouldn't work out, at least for many of you or some of you in the UK. It just is. That's not the game plan.
That's the idea. If you put the ones that you want to push at the sides on wheels, and then when you need a bench in the middle, put them to the middle, kind of create the shape you need, and then you don't need them pushing back to the walls, but have the tool on the tilt top for those occasions you want it against the wall or whatever the heck you want to do. Tilt top's not important, but that modular approach, I'd say all day long.
Yeah, I mean, a modular generally, I think, is probably. I mean, I was just thinking about it. There's, for me, and I hadn't actually thought of this until now, the two most important, or in this case, smartest options is put stuff on wheels and don't skimp on the wheels. because if you get cheap,
yeah.
if you buy this is my this is my life lesson for the week, Chris. Is if you're going to buy wheels for stuff to put stuff on wheels, buy the biggest, bestest wheels you can possibly afford, and don't even think about skimping, because you can't move stuff on little wheels. It just breaks. You've got to buy them anyway.
Yeah.
But also a modular approach, and you only have to look at all the tool companies in the sort of the trade arena. All the tool brands, all their toolboxes are now modular. Do you remember back in the day, you used to buy those blow molded plastic tool cases, and you'd have to make 42 trips from your cupboards or your van to work.
Yeah.
And now it's just all in a big stack.
Big stack.
Yeah.
Clamps together.
Yeah. Or put it on wheels. Wheel it.
Yep.
The two cleverest things you could possibly do. Put stuff on wheels and make it all modular.
Take away from this chat, that would be it for me. Put it on wheels, make it modular.
Because floor space,
100%.
let's be honest, floor space is the most valuable thing you have in your shop.
Mm-hmm.
It truly is. But yeah, I want to briefly just kind of change. I want to. I briefly want to help people like me that are out there not feel bad about themselves, is because when I think of a smart space for me, myself, just myself talking here, Chris's smart space entails Chris knowing where everything is. That's it. Bottom line. If I know where it is, that's fine. If I have a shop where it's so disjointed and so disorganized and so that I have to spend hours looking, that's not a shop. That's not smart. That's called being disorganized. As long as I know where it is, that's smart enough for me. But it entails exactly what Dale was talking about. It means when I use something and I'm done using it, I immediately put it back, because I need to know it's going to be there for the next time. I don't leave my 10 millimeter socket laying around. When I'm done using my 10 millimeter socket, it goes back inside my toolbox. Okay, so I don't lose my 10 millimeter the way other people do. But I mean, because trust me, I can lose my tape measures and pencils all freaking day long. That just happens. Okay, I mean, but when I'm using tools, when I'm done using them, I put them back. It's just a habit that I've gotten into, and as long as I know where it is, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
You know you're there with that when you can sit in the house and say, you're looking for the tape measures, walk into the workshop, on your right, you'll see the scroll saw, look in the shelf above that, there's 4 tape measures sitting there.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yep. Exactly. And
I'm all right. I'm all right if it's metal in my workshops. I'll just swing a magnet around and a bit of string and just pick everything up.
Everything's been pulled off the walls.
Yeah.
Do you guys use the kind of the shadow board idea for like a tool wall or anything like that?
That's a flavor of 5S. Everything has a place. There's a place for everything. You know, it's like the foam cutouts.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah. But you know what? I think that those foam cutouts look very nice. They're very pretty. I don't care about pretty in my shop, and I think those foam inserts are a waste of space.
I think they look nice, but I think once they get clogged up with dust, it'd look. You start turning Paducah or something like that, and all of a sudden the red dust will just turn it looking horrible.
I know I could store all those tools in a more efficient way as far as space concerns go. I mean, I know that they look nice, and hey, that's just me. Okay, if you have it and you love it, then God bless you. Okay, that's fine. I'm not trying to criticize anybody. I'm just saying for me, it won't hit, and I don't see the point.
Yeah, I can remember being at college in a hangar, and every single tool, to every spanner, every socket, individual size had a shadow board, and it was just kind of nails and pins and things hanging up on hooks and screws, but behind them there were luminous orange cutouts of that tool. And somebody had painstakingly drawn and cut around these things, put these stickers on. So the reason for that was not because of being tidy. Well, it kind of was. It was more about, you could look at the end of a shift and be like, the locking pliers are missing. Where are they? Has someone walked off with them, or they left them in a plane, like wedged in a wheel somewhere, and that happened. it's kind of important. But the moral of that story is don't lose your 4D mag light and leave it in the undercarriage bay on a Hercules, because when they do that retraction test, your torch is not going to survive it. Anyway, this is genuinely someone did that. And from that, I totally agree with you, Chris. It's just a huge, I think, waste of space. And it comes back to that kind of flippy module thing in my mind, is the space is more valuable than the ease it is to find that particular tool. However, going back to the modular thing that we were talking about with those tool cases, they are brilliant for packaging your tools up and making sure they go from A to B to C and back again in good order. That is to protect it, to make sure you haven't left a battery somewhere in somebody's house or a tool out in somebody else. That's when it comes.
Doing what you do, I can see the point in having that. Doing what I do, I have no use for it.
So for me personally, workshop environment, I don't subscribe to that idea, but in a kind of a transient hobo environment in which I find myself most of the time, that absolutely is a consideration. But it could be.
I took before we had the workshop when I was building the house, I've still got them. I've got my DeWalt stack. I've got 2 DeWalt stacks for all the same reason, for all the tools I use for it. You can kind of create. I was going to point at a cupboard you guys can't see, but that cupboard just has 2 shelves with the actual boxes with the drawers fit in there, lovely, and they just get lifted out and taken. Should I need to go and do something, let's go. So you can kind of win a little bit, but that same idea of thinking about this is now a modular storage unit within the bench. Take it out and go and do stuff. You see people doing that all the time with the Stanley boxes. They make a rack for the Stanley boxes for all the same reasons.
Yeah,
so modular. I think that's kind of where I would go from. The biggest lesson I learned is do it modular, because it's expensive and a pain in the ass to not do it that modular.
I actually bought some plastic spice wrap. They're more like clips. Yeah. Off of Wish, I think it was. I think I've got them for like £1 or something like that. And I just bought a few of them and used that for the tools. And I've just bought some Von House magnets, and they're really good actually. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. Just like the walls. whacked up some battening, which also isn't white. And whacked up some plywood and screwed that to that, and the rest is history.
So I love my Von House magnets and my
they're really good. They're really good.
But somewhere in my head, they're doomed. I need to do something more intelligent with the tools that's currently getting. I know which magnet I'm sticking them to, but somewhere in this swim, I need to do something smarter with those tools, because it's kind of still that element of lazy kind of thing. Useful, but lazy. It's definitely a step to wherever. I have no idea what I'm going to do yet, so I'm not going to be a genius here and say, what you want to do is, but I know that they're annoying me at some level, and I need to do something with them, because the wall space is precious. I'm covering them in the mags, which is what I've done. I don't know, I think I've got 8 of them in here. The tools could be stored smarter. Don't know what that smarter looks like yet, but something smarter. Don't know. Maybe steal a few pieces from Richard's book and build a tool cabinet.
Well, I think you're probably right, because I think, as we mentioned, I think floor space is probably the most valuable in a workshop, and second after that would be wall space, and becoming efficient with that. And some things are easier to say than they are to do, depending on your situation. But if you think about it, and if you're clever about it, and if you work in the shop long enough, you kind of end up figuring out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Because I've gone through several iterations of having my tools that I have, and finally getting to the point of realizing I don't use this tool often at all. It's one that I want to have, because when I do need it, I need it. But does it need to have a prominent space in my workshop? No. So why do I have it in one? Move it, store it, put it away so that when the time comes, and maybe that's maybe once or twice a year that I need it, at least I know where it is and I can pull it out, but it's not cluttering up, wall space, workbench space, things of that nature. You store it somewhere else and you pull it out when you need it, then you put it back when you're done. And I'm just giving you my opinion, like we said before.
I think one of the things I did, I don't know if I'm guilty of, if I'm the only one who's guilty of this. When I got my brand new set of files, new set of files, 6 files, etc. Oh, what I need to do is I need to put these on the mag rack so they're on display. I'm the only one that needs to know where the heck they are. Why am I putting them on display, kind of thing? Oh, it's easy to get them. No, it's not. If you want to show people, it comes in the workshop. Don't lie.
Yeah. Why?
That was one of the considerations I had with my kind of original tool hanging thing, tool wall, I suppose it was. It was easy to get to because it was just at the badge, but also it made a kind of a good backdrop for videos. And that sounds really, really pretentious and waste of space-ish. And it kind of is. But it actually is kind of valid as well, unfortunately. But it's just such a pain. Everything gets covered in dust, particularly when you put a lathe in front of it by 18 inches and then just cover it all in shavings. That gets boring real quick.
I mean, the only way to avoid that is with
boxes.
That's why my tool wall with all my lathe tools and stickers and all that lot is also used as a backdrop. Because I could quite easily film the other direction, but I use it as a backdrop.
It does. It works. I mean, and that's fine. And it has that advantage of things are easy to get to, whether they're files on the magnet or whatever. But I just got bored of just dusting everything down all the time. Every time you got to try and use something, you got to hoover it down. Which obviously isn't healthy either. Not just because it's dirty, you're breathing that dust in. That's not good.
Yeah,
and that was the kind of catalyst, if you will, for building that tool cabinet. Word of wisdom for anyone thinking about building a tool cabinet: when you watch, I mean, I must have watched 20 half-hour videos the way people had held, just from the how do people hold their tenon saw and how do they hold their screwdrivers, and like 3-4 different ways, just sitting there trying to work out in your head how many you can fit in that space takes forever. It is the most boring, dullest thing in the entire world, and it drives you up the wall, particularly when you can't get to any of the tools that you're using or you need to use in order to do the thing that you're doing, because they're all in a box.
Right.
It's the most frustrating thing is building a tool. It's literally the most frustrating project I have ever done. Everything's in the way.
You know what I don't have in my shop? And a lot of people have a ton of them. And I actually have one very small one. And that's it. I have absolutely no drawers in my workshop. I'm not kidding. I have one drawer, and it's on a cabinet that I built that now my sharpening system for my lathe tools is on. And I don't have drawers for a single reason, because my drawers end up turning into junk drawers. And then when I'm looking for something, I have to dig through the drawers to find the freaking thing that I need. And it's like,
this is getting worse. I'm laughing too much.
No, Jamie, there are sometimes I don't wear my drawers in my workshop either. But
there we go.
But I don't.
He's going back to David Gagne and his big old nuts.
All right, I give up. I see. I was going to try to make a valid point there, but there's no point.
Go on, sir. Please,
right. No, thank you, Jamie. That's fine. No, I said I'm going to say, and if people can get beyond the obvious double entendre that was implied there, then we'll be okay.
I genuinely love drawers in a workshop. Absolutely.
I hate them.
I have found the way to do drawers in a workshop, for me personally, and take this with a pinch of salt, or for however you like. small drawers, shallow drawers that that everything's they don't have to be necessarily tight fitting drawers, but you don't want massive deep drawers, big baggy things that you just like you can rattle around stuff in, because that's when they end up with junk in your drawers, literally. And I was deliberately trying to do the whole, but no, seriously, small shallow drawers. I've got all my kind of pillar drill stuff, different sizes of drill bits in the drawer that's only maybe 2 inches deep, and that's got all the drilling stuff in one place, and it never gets cluttered. It's just that stuff. Same with screws.
If you open up the drawers too fast and things are swinging about inside of the drawers all over the place.
Yeah, I've got drawers full of screws.
Oh yeah.
But the one thing I think, the one question.
I remember to hoover it all out because your drawers could end up getting dirty as well.
You get dust in your drawers.
No one likes dirty drawers.
No one likes grit in their drawers.
No, stop. Seriously. Look, I know that people, obviously, because I've seen the builds where people would build their miter-saw stations, and you'd see that, and they're built across an entire wall, and there's tons of those pull-out things that you stick things in. I'm not going to use the word D. I'm not going to use the D word anymore. It's just not happening. I just know.
Speaking of drawers, Mark Christmas says he has drawers in his workshop. We just don't wear them in the hotel lobby.
I was just going to offer that.
That's a funny story we can talk about later, Mark.
Right there.
Mark, we actually have to have you come. We actually have to have Mark come on the podcast with us one day, because Mark, let us know when you're available on a Sunday, because we want you to come join us anyway, just because that story's funny enough. But those things that you pull out and put stuff in and push back in, I honestly, seriously, at least in my situation, I don't see the point in them. Only because I know it will happen if I had them. I'll just, because I don't know about anybody else. I mean, everybody has a junk drawer in their kitchen, do they not? Or some sort of junk drawer somewhere. That's what mine would end up looking like. And then when I needed that one thing that I don't use that often, only a couple times a year, I know I'd throw it in a drawer. And if I had too many of them in my shop to pull open and look into, it would take me forever to find the darn thing. Anyway, I don't think they're efficient. I mean, at least not for me.
And again, that's a personal. That's as personal as whether you have
personal opinion. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the miter saw station wall thing. Anyway, that's just not. Even if I had the space for it, I'd do it, I think, slightly differently. But that's by the by. And I'm not a big fan of the pillar drill tables. I tried that; it didn't work for me. But I know people absolutely love them. That's a kind of a personal thing. And I've lost my train of thought. I was going to say, going back to drawers, they can get very expensive because we all see the full extension, soft close, ball bearing mechanism drawer slides.
It's a workshop, for crying out loud. Why do you need the soft
No, but exactly. That can be expensive.
For F's sake, what the hell are you doing, dude? I mean, this is my hammer. I need to put it away in the drawer and make sure it doesn't get disrupted.
Doesn't get hurt. Yeah.
Give me a freaking break, all right? Anyway, come on, man. That's a little over the top for me. I apologize.
I totally agree. Mine are on bits of wood that have been waxed with a candle. But when you're new, or you see it, you think, oh yeah, I put all these drawer slides, and then you think, well, I've got how many pairs? You think, whoa, hang on a minute, that's starting to get a bit expensive. You just kind of go with it, don't you? Yeah. It's got that potential too. So spend the money on the wheels, folks, not on drawer slides.
I agree.
Yep.
The only thing that I would say would be is that we've talked about the tools, but the other big thing, it's true of wood turners, it's true of scroll saws, it's probably true of everybody, is where do you store your materials? Being smart about your material storage in your workshop is almost as important as what do you do with your tools.
I sussed this a few years ago. I've got a foolproof solution to this. Seriously, absolutely foolproof solution. Store it at the timber suppliers. Genuine. No, seriously, I'm not even joking. I do not store anything. Anything that's around is left over from something else. If I need 18 mil MDF, 4 mil ply for whatever it is, I get it for whatever it is, and I get them to cut it where possible. So I don't need a big.
I've never needed that either. And somebody asked that, and I misunderstood the question. Or I assumed the question was coming from somebody in the UK, and it ended up not being that way. There was a gentleman wondering who asked the question, saying, "I have a very small workspace, and I was wondering what people's ideas were for me to store my timber." So I started asking the gentleman. I said, "Well," because I assumed he was working in a shed, and that was wrong. But my assumption was this: is that if you're working in a shed, how well insulated is that shed? Is it exposed to the same kind of temperatures as the outside? And if it is, then you don't need to worry about storing that timber on the inside of your shop. You build something on the outside of your shop that has a tarp or something that covers the wood, and you're doing the same thing. You don't need to create a lumber rack in a small space when, if it's not, well insulated, then store it outside, because that's going to be just as insulated as it is inside your shed. So why fuss over finding space inside a small spot for large pieces of timber that can be stored right out the door? It's like, and I was wrong. The gentleman was actually talking about he has a workshop in one of his upstairs bedrooms. And it was very well insulated. But the point was that is like, if you have a poorly insulated shop to begin with, then don't kill yourself with trying to store timber if you have extra on hand inside your workshop, when you can find a place outside to do it and just cover it from the rain. You'll be fine.
Yeah, the reason for the question, the reason for surfacing it, and I chose those two quite specifically, the sort of scrollers and the sort of wood turners. The wood turners will have a capital investment in bow blanks, and bow blanks are quite an expensive thing. So, and they're also quite bulky. The worst thing wood turners are notorious for going off and buying wood blanks everywhere they can see one. So it was really from that kind of angle of that. And Rich is absolutely right. I do the same thing. If it's got any sort of scale to it, it stays and to Champions or whoever until I need one. But the more challenging stuff is the material you're using a lot of regularly, and you have to buy in sort of chunks of, if you're a scroll saw, you're buying plywood or whatever. And a bit of investment in some of those things.
Gentlemen, I did not realize the time had gone by as quickly as it has. We're already at an hour, and we haven't even had. That went by really fast. Jimmy, do we need to make you sing again today? Is that a necessary thing that we have to do?
I can quickly do it. Jamie's page. There's nothing.
Then can we just move on to shout outs then, if you got one? Jamie, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a shout out. So my shout out today goes to Mr. Ruben. He made a customized tape measure out of wood. Not only that, but he's only got 136 subscribers, so go and help a man out. He's an awesome guy. He always helps out people by attending other people's lives and participates in the chat. So, yeah, go and help out a man and go and show him some love and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, Mr. Ruben.
Awesome. Richard?
My shout out this week is what did I say it was? I've got to get the channel name right. It's a Technic Lego building channel. But from an engineering point of view, it's called the Brick Experiment Channel, and it's a lot of Lego Technic using gears. And the guy, and it's not just like those Lego Technic toys we got on Christmas morning. We're talking like the latest one he made was a well, I'm trying to get the name right. It sounds like Google. It's probably where Google got their name from, but it's the mathematical term for a number which is 1 times to the raised to the power 100. Just like such a, think of a trillion is 1 with 9 zeros. This would be 1 with 100 zeros on the end. That's that big a number, and it's a gear reduction system that goes from it's a 1 to the power 100 gear ratio. And he makes like he built a press for like a 50 kilogram press and a mechanism for twisting metal bars and stuff like that. It's like proper engineering, but with Lego technique. Absolutely amazing. They're quite short videos.
Wow.
It's just interesting to watch. It just puts all the gearing together, and really cool stuff. Definitely worth a watch. And it's making as well. So
that'd twist my brain. Dale, what about you, buddy? You got one?
So it's not. So Masha is not for a YouTuber, but for an Instagrammer. A UK guy by the name of Dave Goodchild. Dave's a scroller, but what he really is he goes by his channel goes by the name of the Antikythera Man. What he's doing is he's building a fully working Antikythera mechanism out of wood. Cutting everything on the scroll saw, the gears and everything, kind of like the guys must have done something like, obviously not with the scroll saw, but something similar, in 50 BC when the mechanism was originally discovered. And for those that don't know, the Antikythera mechanism is kind of like a mechanical computer, mechanical predictor in some respects. And he's building all of this using a scroll saw out of wood. Guy from the UK, check it out. It's absolutely incredible.
Wow, I'll have to check that out. My shout out this week goes to somebody who obviously doesn't need a shout out, but he's such a nice guy that every time he puts out a video, I feel like I have to say something. Goes out to Peter Brown. He put out a video, I believe it was earlier today, that he was making. He made knife scales for that dude. What's his name up in upstate New York?
Jay Rivera.
No, Jay lives in the Bronx. No, it's the
Tony Rillo.
See, Tony, I would remember. This guy is like Bimmy Soresta, something like that. I don't. Anyway, he
Billy Siesta.
Oh, that chicken bloke.
Yeah, that chicken guy. Sorry,
Al's
Jimmy.
Toy Barn.
Sorry, Jimmy. Anyway, he made knife scales for Jimmy, and then Jimmy actually had a follow-up video that he also released about an hour after Peter did his, and so it was just kind of a cool collab to watch. So if you have an opportunity to watch it, both Peter Brown and Jimmy DeResta, they both collabed to build a knife together, and it was pretty freaking awesome the way they did it. So I just figured I'd give them some love for that. And just quickly, while I can, I want to say thank you to SK Crafts. He gave me a shout out on one of his videos this week. So, my friend, thank you. I appreciate that. I was not expecting it. Very nice of you.
I've also got a premiere coming up in half an hour or so.
Ooh,
and Caitlin the cat has got one at 11:15.
There you go, Jamie. You had your chance with Jamie's page and you blew it. Yeah, don't drag it out now.
I know.
Talking of dragging things out, obviously, Dale, thanks for coming on. It's always a pleasure having you on the show with us. In fact, it's generally a pleasure having all of our guests on, including the live people in the chat. So if you are still listening, thank you very much. If you're not, as usual, we say what we like about you. I have no idea if we're staying on to do a free. We're not on Patreon, but we generally have a little waffle after party thing at the end, but not for too long, because apparently Jamie does something a little later on Sunday evening as well. And obviously Caitlin Cat's got her live premiere as well. So Dale, thanks for coming on. Everyone else, thank you. Until next week when we talk about something else, probably, you all take care.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bonjour.